All right. Welcome, everybody, to the June 1st Friday e-call on the second Friday of June. Thanks for everybody for allowing us to wiggle the schedule around a little bit. I'm really excited today to talk to you about entrepreneurship, to talk to you about K-State, and have some really fantastic guests on the call. I am Jessica Nadd. I'm the Director of Economic Development for Kansas State University, and I am joined today by my colleague, Jennifer Tidball.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good to see some familiar faces on the call. Happy that you're all here. Yeah, we're super excited about our guests today. Really excited to talk about this great opportunity coming up. Yeah, I've got the slides ready to go whenever you're ready, Jessica.
All right, let's do it. Let's fire them up. All right, so as we get started here, we love to hear who is with us. Drop your name, your organization, where you're joining from in the chat. I'm in Manhattan, Kansas, USA. Jennifer is actually in Sedgwick County in Wichita, so we're spread across the state. We typically have some colleagues that are also spread across the state of Kansas with us today. So let us know who you are and what's on your mind. Also, this is always an interactive conversation. We see a ton of familiar faces. So as you have questions, don't hesitate to pop it in the chat, raise your hand, come off camera, however you want to get your message across or your question across. Feel free to go ahead and do that. So today I'm really excited because we're talking to some very dynamic individuals who have a great program that they want to share with you. And actually, when I first heard about the Next Stage Community Health and Vibrancy pilot competition, I was like, we do that? We do that here in Kansas. You know, it felt super, super enthusiastic, lots of energy. And so, thanks to my friend Colette, she called me up and she's like, Jessica, we got to talk about what is going on in Kansas, about this partnership we have, and about the way that we are elevating entrepreneurs in the state of Kansas and really digging into Kansas communities. So, very excited about that. We're going to highlight opportunities for extension professionals, folks that are working in economic development, community development professionals, and people who are really looking to engage with emerging solutions, right? So we're going to do that here today. So Jennifer, go ahead and flip over to the next slide. So these first Friday e-calls have been all about entrepreneurship. And I just kind of want to connect the dots of where we've been in our conversations over the last couple months. So we've been focused on entrepreneurship, and what has become really clear to me is that there isn't just one path, right? And so you'll hear me say over and over again that entrepreneurship in Kansas has many on ramps, right? There's a lot of places you can go to kickstart some healthy and successful entrepreneurship. In February, we talked about the innovation infrastructure. We talked about Link Innovation Labs in Topeka, Kansas with Stephanie Moran and Go Topeka. And then March, we actually had our Nexus friends back with us. We talked to Connor Adler and we talked about access to capital and how we move startups from ideas to scale in the state of Kansas with the Game Changers and Champions. In April, we talked with Network Kansas about youth entrepreneurship, which is just one of my favorite topics. And if you've ever attended any youth entrepreneurship competition across the state, you will know what I'm talking about. And then last month, we talked to our friend Nancy Daniels about connecting entrepreneurship, or no, excuse me, connecting entrepreneur communities. So for those of you out there, let me know if you are registered for CEC. It's the event that's going to take place in Cortland, Kansas. It's where we immerse ourselves into a Kansas community. We learn all about their community strategies for entrepreneurship. We bring in experts and we have all sorts of different sessions. I'm excited to be there. Let me know if you're going to be there. Our presentation from last month, I think, swayed a lot of individuals. I heard a couple people say, you know what, Jessica, I didn't plan on driving across Kansas to stay in a small town for 3 days, but because of that call, we're gonna go and we're gonna stay. So whether it's trying to find entrepreneurship space across the state, work with capital, networks, youth engagement, community ecosystems, K-State is here and we want to help people elevate their ways of really kickstarting their community and their entrepreneurial dreams. So this conversation today, Jennifer, go on to the next slide. Pictures of our CEC. Ron Wilson wanted me to update the group that we're going to have just a fantastic remote work Wednesday. It'll be on July 10th at 12 p.m. And we're going to be talking to Stephen Johnson, and his presentation will be over Home in the Heartland grant program. So if you have not joined those remote work Wednesday sessions with K-State Extension, please consider it, share it out with your friends, and let us know what other content we can share on your behalf. So with that, I'm gonna quit talking everybody's ear off, and we're really gonna get into our conversation today about community health trailblazers and how we meet entrepreneurs. I'm gonna hit a button here and creating really new models for Kansas communities. So with that, I'm going to introduce our two speakers. Today with us, we are going to have Virginia Barnes, and she's going to help us frame the big picture. Virginia brings a statewide perspective on community investment and understands deeply how health, economic opportunities, and community vitality are connected. And then our second speaker, who's actually, I think, going to kickstart things first, is Colette Atkinsons from Nexus, and she leads the Next Stage Community Health and Vibrancy Pilot Competition. So to all of our speakers, hello, hello. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Can everyone see my screen pretty good?
Yeah, it looks great to me.
Okay. So today we're going to talk just about the community health trailblazers and how Blue Cross Blue Shield and Nexus are working together to help entrepreneurs thrive in the state of Kansas. So Virginia, I'll go ahead and pass things on to you.
All right, thank you so much, Colette. We are excited to be here. I do also want to note that I have Giovanni Gonet on the call. She's our community health program manager, and she's also been very involved in our Next Stage and other initiatives. So we're excited to both be here with you today. And really, I just wanted to frame up a little bit about why Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas is investing in entrepreneurs and innovation in Kansas. And so we have been working through our Blue Health Initiative since 2016. And really, the mission of that is to invest in communities. And we want to do that to create sustainable, healthy places where Kansans live, work, and play, and improve the quality of life of Kansans. And so it really is broader than just being a healthcare insurance. It's really about being an organization that is in the position to be a backbone organization for health in Kansas. We are a not-for-profit insurance company, and we have served Kansas for over 80 years. And we really do believe we are Kansans working for Kansans. And so when we talk about health, we want to talk about it at a sort of that large, full person, whole person health level, and how communities and a community investment impacts health. And so we have a couple of work streams with how we work. So if you see on the right side of the screen, we have our Pathways to a Healthy Kansas initiative, which is one of our largest community initiatives. We have our Trailblazers work, and that's really where this particular project sits with us. And so that's really about how do we help find those innovative solutions, and how do we really think about what are the challenges in Kansas being kind of a unique place, having that really rural and frontier piece that we have to think about access and innovation in, and how do we make sure things work for us. And then we have a couple of other things, our healthy lifestyle work, as well as our health equity program that sit under our Blue Health initiatives. And so really the other kind of unique thing about our Blue Health Initiatives work is that this is really about serving all Kansans. So when we look at what can we invest in across the state, we don't specifically say how does that help just our members. We want to make sure that all Kansans are living their healthiest lives. And so this work is really about impacting any Kansas and all Kansans within our service area. Which is, and I will point that out, 103 of the 105 counties in Kansas. So we do not cover Johnson and Wyandotte, but we cover the rest of y'all. So we're excited to be working on this particular initiative as well. So next slide. All right, and so just framing that up just a little bit further, this is kind of thinking about where does entrepreneurship and innovation fit in? And so when we talk about health, I always use this as there's more to health than healthcare. And honestly, 10 years ago when I started this work, this felt like the hardest piece to get across to people. And for the most part, and I hope this is true of this audience today, I feel like when we say, hey, when you think about your own health, only about 20% of that is impacted by your actual health care within the care system. And maybe about 20% or so is your genetics. So you can stop blaming mom and dad, because really social and environmental and behavioral health factors are probably the things that are impacting you most. So where you live, or your education, your spiritual community, all of those pieces that kind of are a part of your daily lives, that's really truly where your health is impacted. So really, community health is a huge part of that work, and social determinants or social drivers of health are something we need to all be thinking about. Kind of what is our role of ensuring that we can actually live the healthiest lives. So again, thinking about how entrepreneurship and wealth are a part of health. Typically, your economic status is a big factor in how healthy and how long you will live, how healthy you'll be and how long you will live. So it truly is an important impact for people as they think about their daily lives. Next slide. And so that's why we do our Trailblazers initiative. And the nice thing about our Blue Health Initiative's work is it really, because it sits under our corporate side, we're able to not only give out grants, but we're able to do some of these bigger sponsorships and pilot pieces that really help us think about the technology and innovation. And so really, as we were thinking about how do we frame up our Trailblazers work, it was really wanting to recognize that is something that we have to consider. What does our state look like? So we're a largely rural state. We know there's different types of barriers to health. So in an urban area, you may have a lot of organizations and just some different challenges to getting people to those and to those services. In a rural area, you may not have those services at all. So we recognize there's different ways we have to think about getting people access to health and healthcare, and help think about that across many miles. And so that was part of it. And the other thing we were thinking is a lot of times there's a lot of really great solutions out there, but they're just not framed up for Kansas. A lot of times we say, just because it works in New York or Boston or Baltimore does not mean it's going to work in Hoxie or Jetmore, right? So we want to make sure that when we do invest in solutions and innovation, we're doing ones that fit best for Kansas. And so that's truly how we try to think about our Trailblazers initiative, and why we feel like this community health and vibrancy pilot program works so well within this space for what we wanted to invest in. All right, and next slide. And this is my final slide, and I just thought it would be fun to give a quote. So Katie's been a great partner with Next Stage, and really is talking about how they're not a big city. There's 4,100 people in Scott City, and by being a part of this competition, which Colette's going to give you all the details on, they've been able to have access to this innovation, access to these technologies that would never have been a part of what they had the ability to focus on for their community prior to this work. And really that is a part of what spurred this in the first place. And so when we were first talking with Nexus about how do we help get entrepreneurs into Kansas, the reference I always use is it felt a little bit like that old game of telephone, which I'm not entirely sure our children actually conceptually understand anymore because they don't know how phones work. But the idea being, I would get a million calls from people who have great technology or innovation, things they want to do to solve healthcare challenges or health challenges. And I spent a lot of time in communities across the state, and I was hearing similar challenges and similar pieces, but those two groups were never talking to each other, and they weren't understanding what does that challenge look like in Scott City. They were only understanding what it looks like again in New York City, and so I thought this is the perfect way to bring these two groups together. Remove me; I don't need to be the middleman in this case, and so Blue Cross can help connect these two and get those pilots going so that we can actually solve those challenges together. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Colette to tell you how that's done.
Thank you so much, Virginia. And we couldn't do this program without the help of Blue Cross Blue Shield, so we thank you guys sincerely. I'm gonna play just a brief video and tell you a little bit more about our program, and then I'll tell you a little bit more how we partner with communities here in Kansas to bring innovative solutions.
We started the Next Stage Community Health and Vibrancy Pilot Competition 5 years ago to do three things. First, help startups thrive. We wanted to speed the pace of innovation in Kansas. We wanted to give community organization unprecedented access to innovators from all over the world. And third, we want to help improve the health and vibrancy of Kansas communities, improve population health outcomes, improve health equity and reach using technology tools, and help communities around the state to thrive.
We participate in the Nexus program because the program aligns so closely with the mission of our organization. To live healthier lives and have vibrant communities is something that we hope to have a positive impact on across the country every day in the work that we're doing.
We joined Nexus because we saw Kansas as a place full of innovative health partners and forward-thinking communities. The program offered a rare opportunity to connect directly with these organizations and co-design solutions for them.
We have had a fantastic experience working with the Nexus team, working with our pilot partners, and also actually getting to know other startups in the area and in the country, and all of the cool things that they're doing for communities around the world was huge. So would highly recommend startups as well as pilot partners to give Nexus Innovation Challenge and showcase an opportunity and really try it out.
We're very fortunate. We have our own hospital in Coffee County. We have a fantastic health department, but health-wise, I'm always looking for ways to bring new things to help our community.
For the last 3 years, we've been involved in the Health and Vibrancy Contest, and just been really impressed with our ability to connect with startups from all around the United States.
When I look at Nexus and I look at the work we've been able to do to partner with them on these innovative technologies, I think about how those technologies have allowed us to streamline and to do our work better and to communicate better with our community members as well.
It's such a unique opportunity. I'm so happy that we were able to participate and that we continue to work closely and making sure that we're able to have that positive impact.
We're excited to continue this partnership and bring more resources to our region.
There's so many people in our state that are working so hard to boost the health in our communities, and I'm just thankful that there's organizations like Nexus that are out there trying to help connect our small communities to better pathways to health.
Okay, so again, I'll introduce myself. My name is Colette Atkinson. I am the program manager for Nexus Next Stage Community Health and Vibrancy Pilot Competition. Since 2021, we have been working with community organizations across the state of Kansas and we go national to scout innovative solutions from startups around the globe and the globe, let's say the globe. We work hard to match startups with our Kansas communities. This year we had like a record number of all things. Like 2026 brought 183 applicants to even put their name in the hat to introduce their solutions to Kansas communities. And we've also scouted our top number of community partners. So I would say our community partners consist of economic development organizations, rural hospitals, health coalitions, school districts, and also nonprofit advocacy organizations. We look and ask them, like, what are the wants and needs of your community, and how can we best find startups that can fill those needs, fill in the gaps for things that our communities otherwise would have no way of implementing those new solutions. I love how Virginia mentioned the game of telephone. I always think about how in rural communities, that game of telephone is just fierce in terms of it's game changing in terms of how partners are able to share their experiences with other community organizations, and then also just spreading the word about these startups and their solutions. So once one community adopts it, another community is more willing to do the same thing as well. So I'll go on to the next slide. Our communities this year, community partners this year, I said we had a record number. This year we have 15. You'll see some that you probably are familiar with, have worked with in the past. Thrive Valley County was one of our community partners from the very start of this program. Live Well Northwest Kansas, Russell Regional Hospital, Hodgman County Economic Development Group, Coffee County Economic Development Group, Newton Medical Center, Coffee Health System came on this year. The Health and Wellness Coalition of Wichita came on this year. Phillips County Economic Development, Dodge City and Ford County Economic Development, Norton County Economic Development, Rooks County Health Center, Wichita Public Schools, Office of Rural Prosperity. Kelly's on the line today, so thanks, Kelly. And then also we have Eric with Hutton. He's in Salina. He has been an economic development partner there throughout like his whole career, and now he's with Hutton, but he is able to connect us with a lot of partners in that area. We talked about trailblazing. I had to look up like the definition, like what is trailblazing and why is that so important? So the definition of trailblazer is innovator or pioneer that leads the way in a new field, activity, or journey. And I would say that our community health and vibrancy pilot competition program would not be successful without those trailblazers that are in community partners you'll see here, and then also the startups that come through our program. And we get to culminate and celebrate these connections where our community partners raise their hand and say that they want to implement this solution that our startups offer in their communities. And we get to celebrate that at our Innovation Showcase. We have that every year. We bring both community partners and our startups to the city of Wichita. This year, they will be here August 31st through September 3rd. And we get to culminate that with a big, I say, pep assembly. We get all of the people, all the players at bay, and then we get to celebrate. They get to pitch their solutions, and then the partners get to announce that they are willing to jump in and pilot those solutions in their area. Last year, we had a great response from our community partners, and thanks to the micro grants that are available through Blue Cross Blue Shield, we were able to implement 22 pilots across the state of Kansas. I say that we live with the mission that helping startups thrive and giving Kansas communities access to leading innovation it has been game changing, and a lot of communities would not be able to implement these new things or even hear about these new things without being introduced. So we love acting as that matchmaker to our community partners and also our startups to give them that footing to get their product into the state of Kansas and for the communities to really thrive and grow from those solutions. Mary Beth, would you like to take it from here?
I totally can. Yeah, I'll try to sort of land the plane and end with kind of where you might fit in here. The first comment I'll make, as Colette said, this program is underpinned by the support and faith that Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas has in the power of Kansans to change their stars, right? And it's true in a couple of different ways. We really see this program as having kind of a triple win. Entrepreneurs and startups that they found thrive. And yep, Colette mentioned that those come from all over the nation and all over the world. We don't want to stop at the border of Kansas trying to find our communities game-changing solutions. If it is making a marked impact in, a rural community in Tennessee or Pennsylvania or the Netherlands, we want to be able to prove it out here in Kansas. So we don't stop at Kansas, but there are problem solvers, there are builders, there are amazing solution providers in Kansas that we want to make sure know there is this unique program that could be their path to market. If you've got folks in your communities that are startups that have these ideas that are, I joke in Wichita, Wichita likes to call itself the air capital of the world. Well, frankly, the state of Kansas is the engine around which
manufacturing for things like airplanes and aerospace, but agriculture. Like, we are really the center of the country, in not only geographically, but for builders, for problem solvers, for tinkerers, right? Both in the built world and in the digital world. So this generation's version of tinkerers, these problem solvers and builders, they exist in your backyards. And for those that are building solutions that are designed to help communities tackle health challenges, tackle community connectedness, community growth challenges, we've brought in and showcased startups providing things like digital platforms that help you increase childcare capacity in your city or in your county, because you can professionalize the home childcare operations you have going on. When they've got an opening, they don't just shove a sign in their yard. They can really get the word out. They can do half slots or whatever. Housing, affordable and housing connections for things like healthcare workers, or just broadly to help grow your communities. Community communication. How does a city connect with its citizens via text, via polling, via, how do the stakeholders have a voice in their communities? And then it's all the healthcare stuff. When you guys wake up in your communities, what are the things that are most bothersome or standing in the way of great health outcomes? Is it mental health care access and specialization? Is it older generations trying to age in place but are suffering from disconnectedness, isolation? Is it youth and their ability to navigate today's world and feel connected out in dispersed communities and in their generation? So there are innovators in our state and without, and we want to give access to all of them that are building systems, tools, and innovations that can help in those areas. So if you go ahead, Colette, to the next thing. So where do you fit in? The first is, I want you to fit into that health equation that Virginia really talked about at the beginning. I will tell you, 7 years ago, when we first started sitting down and organizing and designing this program, it was the first time I comprehended that if you want to predict someone's health, life expectancy, sort of quality of health throughout their life, and you only get to ask them one question, it's not, do you eat a lot of Doritos? It's not even what you weigh. It's what's your zip code? And that is really interesting and not where I would have predicted. The multitude of characteristics in our communities that mean you do or don't have ready access and the ability to connect with good health habits and good health care is so important. So if you want more of the zip codes in your area to be propagating great health outcomes, then this getting engaged in this program, I think, could be for you. So as I mentioned, you fit in two ways. One, get your entrepreneurs, your tinkerers, your problem solvers, make sure that they know this exists. At the very least, they can tune in. We do a statewide broadcast of the Innovation Showcase. That's September 3rd that Colette mentioned. It's a lunch, but they don't need to come to Wichita. They can just listen in and get a sense for what these solution providers out there are doing, whether they started in Kansas or they started somewhere else around the country or the world. What are people thinking about better health outcomes for rural communities and for communities like ours? What are they coming up with? So get your problem solvers engaged. If they're already thinking about a food as medicine solution or a connectivity and mental health, sort of app for your community, gamifying wellness for a small town or a county, they can compete in this next year, and we want them to sort of build up momentum for it. The second way you can be engaged is as a partner. Colette showed the 16 partners that we have this year, Kelly among them. These are folks that are raising their hand, first of all, to be heard. As Colette mentioned, we listen, right? We get you to sort of provide what it is that keeps your community up at night with respect to community health and vibrance, connectivity, and capabilities. What is it that worries you about today or tomorrow's challenges? And then we use that listening to go find you great problem solvers, innovators, solution providers, startups. I mean, these are folks that haven't yet formed their solution. So they're open to co-collaborate. They want to they're open to market feedback. They want to design around your needs, and they aren't $1 million yet. Colette mentioned that micro grants. I mean, we've been able to implement game-changing, cool solutions, try something new that you didn't know existed for anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000. And the micro grants help you get started. And then maybe there's an awesome grant you can go seek out in your community to help that maternal health solution or that mental health accessibility. So we help you dip your toe in the water of innovation and leaning forward. And then where you go from there is up to you. One of the speakers on the video runs a company called Advocacia, and they did a 1-county pilot after our one of our early years of this competition. And by the next year, it was statewide. It's basically a platform that helps people who are entitled to state or federal benefits to help improve their families' finances and health situation, but they weren't accessing them. These are busy people. There might be language barriers. And by the way, accessing government programs is not typically smooth and easy paperwork operations, right? Well, Advocacia did a digital platform that smooths out all those curves and gets those folks the services they deserve. So these are the kinds of trends we're helping start around the state. Couldn't do it without Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. Couldn't do it without the partners that are out in the counties leaning in. If someone out there in your community is thinking, oh my gosh, we ought to be the ones lining up to be in the front row, not the back of the bus, for getting access to these curated innovations. We weed out the weirdos, right? Like we weed out the startups that, that are sort of off kilter for what we need. We also weed out the ones that aren't going to make it, right? So you can have trust that who we align you with is set up to be a great partner for you in implementing things. So find the problem solvers in your backyard, get them engaged in this program. This year, just listen in on that innovation showcase at lunchtime on September 3rd. And then partners. Does your economic development group, does your local health department or medical center or physician practice or school district, are they willing to raise their hands and say, hey, listen to me and my needs, and I might be willing to try something? So remember September 3rd, 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. We invite everybody to come in from around the state. And then we broadcast statewide for those folks that can't get to be in the room. So thanks so much for all of our partners. Appreciate your guys' time today. This unique program, we in Kansas, we don't like to brag very much, but I'm going to brag on Colette and Virginia and everybody that's a part of this program. There is nothing like this elsewhere in the country. In fact, the Walton Family Foundation down in Arkansas liked what we were doing so much in Kansas that they hired us to do it in Arkansas. And so they see the power of this in their markets, and they've asked us to help their local partners stand this up. So we're in year 1 of doing that outside our borders, but Kansas is where it started. And I think we can be proud of that and proud of the impact that 70 plus innovation projects over the last few years, the differences that they've made in communities and in our statewide chances to make sure that what's your zip code story is a good one in your area and throughout our state. Thanks so much, guys.
Okay, Mary Beth, Colette, Virginia. First of all, great conversation. And Mary Beth, you're so great at landing the plane, right? Like I'm gonna bring you on for every call, no matter what topic. We're just gonna hand it over and say, Mary Beth, land this plane. But I took 2 pages of notes here. The whole Kansas Nice thing is so true. Yesterday, I got to meet with a facility at K-State, and it's called the BRI, and it is globally known. The quote was like Silicon Valley of biosecurity. And I was like, that's here. And it's one of those things where we don't tout ourselves. Like we don't talk about what Kansas is doing. And I know that a lot of us on this call, we're all shaking our head, and it's a part of our fabric not to do that. But when Colette called me and said, Jessica, I really think we need to talk about what's going on with this program, I was just like, wow, this is so amazing for Kansas. So it got me thinking, nuts and bolts, like what comes first? Is it so basically we're lifting up a pre-qualified almost list of startups, people that you've qualified through the Nexus system. And then how do you guys go about doing that matchmaking to Kansas communities? So we saw the quote from Scott City. Like how, as you're looking across 103 counties, how were you like, okay, Scott City, like that's the one we're going to choose. So give me more of those nuts and bolts on the matchmaking process, or speak to the Kansas Nice aspect of of how amazing this is. And I don't know who my question is to, so you guys can figure that out.
Well, why don't I set it up and then I'll let Colette give you the practical. So I think that I'll dive into the sort of how do we do the matchmaking, because if someone is ready to sort of raise their hand and say, I might be willing to look at new things, I might be willing to talk my people back here in my county or my city into trying something, you want to know a little bit more about kind of how it works. And Colette can kind of explain that. But I'll give you the big picture. First step, as she mentioned, is listening. You get a chance to raise your hand and say, here's the stuff I know our community is concerned about or cares about. Then you sit back and we do a crap ton of work. We go out to innovators near and far. We whittle them down, that 183 competitors that Colette mentioned. There's only a couple of dozen by the time our partners get to see them, because that's what we do, is sort of create this funnel that eliminates and it gets them down to the ones that are most highly promising and most focused. And then, and this is the part I'll let Colette describe, then the partners re-engage. And they do so not only to hear for the things they said I need, but also that stuff you didn't know you need, but oh my gosh, as soon as someone is offering it, you're like, of course we ought to, give that a try. And then so that couple of dozen gets whittled down, and we end up with folks kind of raising their hands to say, here's the one thing I could do, or the two things I could do. Katie Eisenhower, when she was at Scott County, doing this work, I think one year she's like, I will do projects with all of you. And there was like 12. And so we try to discourage that, actually, because ambition is awesome, but practical implementation is king, right? So Colette, why don't you talk a little bit about what it feels like to be a partner through that process?
Okay. And Kelly, I might lean on you to hop in there if you want to as well, like you're on the call. So usually at the very start of the year, I reach out to our partners from the previous year just to ask them, like, what are the wants and needs of your community? Like really, like as of this point, right here, right now, what are things that could really help bring things forward in your community? And they provide me a list. It's usually like a top 3 to 5 list of things that they really, really want and need. And then I work with a scout organization to just really fine tune like those wants and needs, like find those startups that are doing those things. And there could be like 6 doing the same thing, but they all do it differently. So we get to actually look through applications, really see like what their offering is and like the success that they've had in that area. And that's usually between Mary Beth and myself. Like we're really looking through those applications to make sure that we're bringing the best and most curated list over to our community partners. Once we get to the point to where we're like, okay, we're closing applications, we're going to go ahead and whittle down that number from that 183 to about 24 this go around. Then we introduce those to the partners. We set like a series of introduction calls between the community partners and our startups. Some go great. Some are like, it just brings the message on home. You're like, okay, we're going to pick them. And others, I think they kind of eliminate themselves, but we're able to see like our community partners really dig in and ask those questions. We can bring them the list, but we really don't know the wants and needs, like how bad they need it in their area. So community partners like Kelly and some of the people you saw in the video, Thrive Valley County, Coffee County, like they really, really like ask those hard questions. I like to say it's like the Jeopardy round, like really prove to us, like, the answer to this question. And in those calls, like Kelly, you can say we meet like maybe it's a 2-hour stretch and we meet with maybe 4 to 6 startups, and then we get to know like their solution. And then like Kelly's probably one of my favorites. She gets to asking all of the hard questions. It's not like I'm going to go easy on you. Like, how is this going to work in my community? Kelly, how do you go about like asking those questions and then really deciding like, okay, I want to know more about this startup?
Yeah, I mean, some of them It's interesting because, well, every time we're on these calls, it never fails. My daughter will walk in. She's like, "Are you doing that Shark Tank thing again?" Is how she like views it because and sometimes, yeah, you feel like that. I mean, frankly, you feel like that jerk's going, now, how is this even going to work? And what's this going to cost? And, stuff like that, just to see, if they've thought through, like, logistically, like, how would we even implement this in a community? And I will say that by the time they get to those calls, between Mary Beth and Colette, they've already narrowed it down. Like, we aren't dealing with duds that have no clue what they're doing. They have made it through some pretty strict guidelines already. So the ones that we look at are ones that it's like, oh, okay, so that could work. And of course, my focus is and will always be on rules. So I tend to lean a little bit more towards how would this work, in our community, or can they scale it for rules? So when you say that tech and these big solutions may not fit for everyone, sometimes I feel like you just have to ask a different question or ask it a different way.
So, going back to kind of that community piece, well, I had two questions from that. So, how many of these startups are typically Kansas-based already? And Colette, you said that you kind of dip into a place where you can kind of attract startups. So how many have been Kansas-based already? Or has there been any company that has decided to make Kansas their headquarters?
So I can speak to one. I've been here about a year now. Like, this is my second go round at it. So usually, I would say we have that make it to our final round. There's usually like homegrown. I'd say like two that usually get through. One that I can speak really proudly on, Karen Health, this last year. A lot of the communities around Kansas were able to implement an over-the-counter pharmacy, either in their United Way or health department areas. And 5 pilots from this last cohort, she was able to connect, and they actually started off with Blue Cross Blue Shield microgrant funding, but then they're able to solidify additional funding to keep that going. Mary Beth, maybe you can speak to past homegrown.
Yeah, I would say the first 2 years we were lucky to get a couple of competitors, meaning of that big number. But in the last couple of years, as Colette mentioned, we've had some Kansas grown and some KC area, startups that were super competitive. But we clearly want more. We can see the thinkers out there around the state, and we just got to make sure they know that this outlet to getting market feedback and growing their idea is here. Back to that Kansas Nice, there's a lot of people innovating that don't think that their home market of Kansas is where they're going to prove out what they're doing, or where they're going to be able to thrive. And this program, among others that Nexus runs and that we're involved with around the state with other partners, are disproving that. But specifically for innovators in this area, we want them to continue to grow in competitiveness and volume and competitiveness. But
yeah, that kind of goes back to
we
the
love
whole
homegrown.
thing.
Sorry, we love homegrown startups, but we want to balance that, right, with the best solutions for communities. It's been a couple of years since we had a startup that got a pilot here and started working and came in and moved their operation to Fort Scott, Kansas, to execute the pilot. And they didn't stay in Kansas long term, but we haven't had many imports of the whole startup capability. But we've turned up Colby Takeda that spoke in the video. They competed successfully twice in our competition and have now done multiple pilots, and they have a Kansas focus for their growth. That means we get their staffers traveling to Kansas and engage with Kansas communities frequently now. They can do what they do from wherever, and sometimes they do it from here. But they see Kansas as a real forward-thinking market that's ready to implement what they offer, which is basically how to get the community health workers in your community, social workers, counselors, et cetera, how to get them paid as community health workers within the current payer-payee system. that we aren't accessing at the current, doulas, that kind of stuff. So it's
Yeah.
really neat how they see Kansas's thirst and respond.
Well, I'm hogging all the questions. Does anybody else have any more questions? I have one on my mind for Virginia and another one for Kelly. But if anybody has questions, interrupt me because, like I said, when I got turned on to this particular way of thinking, I just knew we had to share it. So, Virginia, one of my questions was the top line health that you're thinking about at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. We talked in our pre-call about why does Blue Cross feel that this helps the population. We talked about social determinants of health, but if I recall, you mentioned something about healthcare savings. And when people find ways of being healthier, that actually alleviates, some of the healthcare burden that the state of Kansas has. So I don't know where my question is in all of that. But yeah, I know we had just some conversation of why this matters to Blue Cross.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a couple ways to think of it, and realistically, we know that the healthcare system that we operate in is, if not broken, not by any means easy or the most, it's not affordable for most people. It is not navigable. I can't say that clearly, but it's not easy to access everywhere. And there's really big challenges. And we also know that, we are a piece of the puzzle. So Blue Cross has a strong focus on our area, our piece of the pie, and we want to make sure that for Kansas they have a healthcare system that they understand, can afford, and can access. Those are really our drivers. That's what we are working towards every day. And so that is, yeah, again, not a tiny challenge. But what's great about being able to think a little bit outside of the box of how we go about that is, again, when you're thinking about this particular program, I think Colette said it best. Like, we sit back and listen, like really listen to what are those challenges that our members and our communities are experiencing, because most of them are access challenges or those really big pieces like mental health. And how do we connect that back? And the reality is those are the same things. Those like chronic conditions, again, mental health, access, those are the things that cost a lot within the system. And so if we can find solutions to bridge those gaps and make people able to access care earlier, access care without sort of those additional costs, such as travel or pieces that are going to make them unlikely to bother accessing the care when they need it, and then having more costly services down the line, we're solving pieces of that challenge, right? And so it's not just, oh, these are cool innovations or they will solve one tiny piece of the puzzle. It's really thinking, if we're talking about health across the lifespan, and we're talking about making sure people live more of the years that they have on this earth as quality years where they are healthy and able to live their best lives, they're also then going to spend fewer dollars on healthcare, and they're going to spend more dollars on other things in our economy. So there's sort of this very big cycle and circle, if you will, of how health and again wealth impact each other, and how we can help make sure that when people access care, they're getting it at the right place, at the right time, and at the right cost. And things like this where we're identifying those solutions are just a piece of that puzzle.
No, I think that's so beautifully said. And then that kind of takes me back to Kelly really quickly. Like, what was tell me about your community and what was the need and what were some of the things that you've seen come in? And then maybe my last question, and then I promise I will shut up, is Colette, just give us the numbers, like how many counties, how many communities, how many, that kind of stuff and what your goals are. But like Kelly, what was the specifics that your community really needed to think about? And then what did that matchmaking company look like that worked in your area?
So mine's a little bit different perspective because I'm trying to focus more statewide,
Okay.
in terms of I mean obviously I care about my community, and I'm really excited that this year we were able to bring on Rooks County Health Center, as one of they actually just got awarded one of the nation's top critical access hospitals. So it was fun to see Samantha join with the partners and really focus on that so I can really think more, I guess, strategically, just what I'm hearing out in rural communities. So it's everything from like, behavioral health, mental health services, ways that they can, do things on a just a smaller scale. One thing that really resonated last year was local food access, with
Yeah.
homegrown and stuff like that. And how do we connect local growers with platforms where they can sell their products or get more exposure. So I didn't have any specific. I guess I don't go into it with a specific list of community needs, like some of the other partners that are, hospital or health organizations or anything like that.
Well, but it's worth adding on to that because if I were to sort of draw a picture of an ideal partner, community partner for this program, it would have a couple of components to it. And if you've got all of them, awesome. If you've got some of them, that's still really, really solid. The first is, and Kelly embodies this in spades, you're just a thinker about what could be possible, right? You want somebody that is future minded and open to maybe thinking differently and working, smarter, not harder on some of these challenges and issues that are in our communities. Second, that they may be, and this isn't necessary, but it is, but many of our partners have it, they might have sort of an incubation space of their own to implement something. It's a hospital, it's a health department, it's a it's a physician practice, it's a city, that kind of thing. And that's great. But regardless of whether they've got an incubator, implementer capability in their own back pocket, the third thing is really what all of them need, and that is the willingness to be a connector and an advocate. So the county economic development leaders that participate with us, for an example, they are implementing almost none of this. They are the connector to the school counselor, the health department administrator, a big employer in town who might want to try something out. They just have to sit there with their other forward-thinking people in their community, Rolodex in their head, and be the one that thinks with their community lens in mind. And then we help create, it's that 20-minute Shark Tank video of the startup pitching and asking and answering those tough practical questions. What does it cost? How would you implement? How tech smart do you need to be to have this in your community? All those things. And we get those little videos that allow then people who haven't been the full participant in the program, but to take a look at one or two or three options and go, man, we could do that. So our part, if you resemble most of those future-minded, willing to connect, and maybe even have a place to implement some of these solutions in your back pocket, then that's a great community partner for us.
Okay.
Can I just add, I think what I've really loved about watching this over the years, we've had some really strong partners who've come back year after year to pilot. And they've, some years they've said, oh my gosh, we can do 5 pilots or 12 pilots. And some years they've said, you know what, maybe one, but maybe we don't have it this year. And then they come back this next year because they're still getting that opportunity to network across the state, and they're still getting that opportunity to hear what's out there, and go back and then talk to their partners locally and say, hey, here, have we thought about this way? And they come back kind of energized the next year, and they ask better questions, and they ask, and they know, if a pilot fails, because sometimes pilots fail, that's why you do a pilot, right? They know why and what they're looking for next time. So I think we've seen this sort of amazing growth and continued excitement from some of our longer term partners, and so it's this sort of it's more than just, it's more than just the money or the one-day event. It's this really big, exciting cycle of improving access and opportunity.
So I guess I'll close things out. Jessica, you did mention just to kind of throw out the stats. I will say I did drop into the chat just last year, so 2025's annual report. There's a page in there with our program stats, like in terms of pilot competitions. But I do want to brag on where we're at this year thus far. So 183 applications, 34 states represented, 20 countries, 15 partners with 2 silent contributors. We had 2 that are like on the bubble that want to be a part of this as partners in the next year, but wanted to kind of get a trial this year. Look on that side. We have Mary Beth and myself. We actually finalized 9 finalists. Just early this week on Monday, we have our 9 finalists and 1 on the bubble. We're getting some feedback on that last one. So there 9, might be 10 finalists confirmed. We have upcoming pitch coaching with our startups. We are going to get that pitch refined into a good 3-minute pitch so that they'll be ready to go for that innovation showcase on September 3rd that Beth had also mentioned. We're ready. We are ready for this year's program, and we are always ready for additional community partners to raise their hand for our next year and the next year and the next year. Like we love to have our returning veterans. We call them our vets. They're able to give like feedback to the newer community partners and let them know like maybe not 5 this go around, like try one pilot this go around. But they are also willing to show that how they go about getting additional grant funding if they want it to continue, like they really want past the pilot. This is somebody that they see themselves working with for the long term. So we thank our community partners. We thank our partners like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Virginia, Giovanni. Thank you guys for all your insight. Just even we have conversations like, what do you guys think about this one? Giovanni even like introducing us to Western communities here in the state of Kansas. Like this is for real, like seriously a partnership, and we couldn't do it without each other. So thank you for allowing us to showcase this on the call today. If anyone has any questions and how they can get involved in this year or even next year's program, we'd love to hear more from you.
All right. That's what we have for everybody. Unless you have additional questions, feel free to ask them. Ask them in the chat. We'll send out the contact information. And okay, I put this on my calendar. I will see you guys September 3rd. We're going to come to Wichita, and it works out perfectly because that's where Jennifer already is across the state. And we will also let our extension colleagues know as well, because I think that would be a really great connectivity. And we can kind of help liaison some of those community conversations. So yeah, with that, that's all I have. My Friday calls, my face always hurts because I'm smiling so much during these calls and my head's shaking. And no, but thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody. Nice to meet you all.